There is a moment that historians argue may have done more to end the Cold War than any missile, any spy, or any military operation in the entire history of the conflict. It didn't happen in a government building. It didn't happen at a summit between world leaders. It didn't happen on a battlefield or inside a secret facility. It happened on a Saturday afternoon in a grocery store in Clear Lake, Texas, a completely ordinary store in a completely ordinary American suburb, when the man who would become Russia's first post-communist president walked through the automatic doors, looked at the shelves, and felt his entire worldview collapse around him. His name was Boris Yeltsin, and what he saw that afternoon in a Randall supermarket in Houston changed the course of history. To understand why a grocery store destroyed a man's faith in his own government, you have to understand what grocery shopping looked like in the Soviet Union in 1989. The Soviet state controlled every aspect of food production and distribution. Farms were collectivized, meaning the government decided what was grown, how much was grown, and where it went. The results were catastrophic and consistent. Empty shelves were not a temporary inconvenience. They were a permanent feature of Soviet life. Citizens woke up before dawn to stand in lines that stretched around entire city blocks, hoping that whatever was being distributed that day hadn't run out by the time they reached the front. Bread, meat, butter, eggs, basic staples that Americans threw in their carts without a second thought, were rationed, scarce, and often simply unavailable. The cruelest part of the system was the lie that accompanied it. Soviet propaganda insisted that the communist model was not only morally superior to American capitalism, but economically superior as well. Citizens were told that the West was suffering, that Americans were poor, exploited and miserable, while the Soviet people lived in a workers' paradise. The government controlled all media, all information, all contact with the outside world, and so the vast majority of Soviet citizens had no way of knowing whether any of it was true. Even the most senior members of the Communist Party, the Politburo, the men who ran the country, had access to special stores that were hidden from ordinary citizens, stocked with goods that the common Soviet person would never see. These stores were a state secret, a quiet acknowledgement that the system didn't actually work, maintained for the exclusive benefit of the ruling class. And even those stores, by any Western standard, were modest. Boris Yeltsin had grown up inside this system. He had risen through its ranks, believed its promises, enforced its rules. By 1989, he was a newly elected member of the Soviet parliament, a reformer who had already begun to question the party line. He had seen enough of the cracks in the system to know something was wrong, but he had no idea, no possible frame of reference for what he was about to encounter. The trip to the United States began on September 9th, 1989. Yeltsin toured New York City. He saw the Statue of Liberty. He visited Trump Tower. He was polite, curious, but not particularly impressed. These were things he had heard about, things that fit into his existing understanding of America as a wealthy but ultimately flawed society. He met with President George H.W. Bush at the White House. He gave speeches. He did what visiting dignitaries do. Then on September 16th, his group traveled to Houston to visit the Johnson Space Center, NASA's mission control, the nerve center of American space exploration. Yeltsin walked through the facility with genuine interest. He saw the Christopher C. Kraft Mission Control Center. He saw mock-ups of planned space stations. He asked detailed engineering questions. He had a background in construction and understood what he was looking at. It was impressive, but it was the kind of impressive he could contextualize. The Soviet space program was formidable. He knew that world. After the NASA tour, Yeltsin and his small entourage got into their cars and began driving to the airport. And then, on impulse, Yeltsin made an unusual request. He wanted to stop at a grocery store, a regular, local American grocery store. Not a special facility, not a showcase, not anything prepared in advance for a visiting Soviet official. He wanted to see where ordinary Americans actually bought their food. The store his guides chose was Randall's Foods at 570 El Dorado Boulevard in Webster, Texas, a suburb of Houston, the kind of place where regular families did their weekly shopping on Saturday afternoons. The store manager, Paul Yerger, received a phone call giving him roughly 15 minutes to prepare for a VIP visitor. There was no heavy security, no television cameras, no media presence except for a single reporter from the Houston Chronicle named Stephanie Arsin, who happened to be along for the day. Nobody thought it was a particularly significant stop. Yeltsin walked through the automatic doors and stopped. What he saw was nothing special by American standards. It was a typical suburban supermarket, the kind of store that existed in every city and town across the United States. The kind of place Americans drove to without thinking twice, parked their cars, grabbed a cart and filled it with whatever they needed. 30,000 products on the shelves, fresh produce in organized, abundant displays, a meat section with every cut imaginable, a frozen food aisle stretching the length of the store, glass-doored cases packed with hundreds of options, free cheese samples being offered to shoppers near the deli counter. Yeltsin walked the aisles slowly, nodding his head. He spoke to customers through an interpreter, asking them questions that must have seemed bizarre to anyone listening. How much does this cost? Are all American stores like this? Do you need special education to manage a supermarket? He stopped at the frozen food section and stood there for a long time, looking at the pudding pops. He tried a free cheese sample. He looked at the fresh fish. He looked at the produce. He picked up cans and read the labels. He was not performing amazement for a camera. There was no camera. He was genuinely, quietly, overwhelmingly shocked. At one point, he turned to his aide and said something that would later be reported around the world. Even the Politburo doesn't have this choice, not even Mr. Gorbachev. Think about what that sentence means. The most powerful men in the Soviet Union, the men who ran the largest country on earth, who controlled its military, its economy, its nuclear arsenal, did not have access to what any American family in a Houston suburb could walk in off the street and buy on a Saturday afternoon. The ruling class of the workers' paradise had fewer choices than a Texas checkout clerk. Yeltsin left the store and got back in the car. The group flew on to their next stop in Miami, and somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico, on that flight, something broke inside him. According to his aide, Lev Sukhanov, who was present, Yeltsin sat in his seat and said almost nothing for a very long time. He had his head in his hands. He was visibly distressed, not angry, not indignant, but genuinely, deeply shaken. After a long silence, he finally spoke. He asked aloud, quietly, to no one in particular, "What have they done to our people?" It was not a political question. It was not a rhetorical device. It was the sound of a man confronting the full weight of what his government had done to the people it claimed to serve. Decades of lies, decades of manufactured scarcity, decades of a system that had deliberately kept its citizens poor while telling them they were living in the most advanced society on earth. Sukhanov later said that it was on that flight that the last vestige of Bolshevism collapsed inside Yeltsin. The ideology he had spent his entire life inside, the system he had risen through, enforced and defended, had been exposed in a single afternoon by a grocery store in Texas that nobody had even thought to prepare for his visit, because there was nothing to prepare. It was just a regular store. That was the point. Yeltsin returned to the Soviet Union a changed man. He continued pushing for political and economic reform with a new intensity, a new urgency. In 1991, he was elected president of Russia, and in that position, he played a central role in dismantling the communist system that had defined his country for over 70 years. 2 months after Yeltsin walked into that grocery store, the Berlin Wall fell. 2 years later, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. History is full of grand causes and sweeping forces, ideological movements, military conflicts, economic pressures, decades of Cold War tension. But sometimes history also turns on the smallest, most unexpected moments. A 21-year-old pilot who steals a fighter jet, a spy plane that flies where no one can reach it, and a Soviet official who stands in a frozen food aisle in Houston, Texas, holding a pudding pop, and understands for the first time that everything his government ever told him was a lie. America didn't win the Cold War in a single decisive battle. America won it one ordinary day at a time, in its factories, its farms, its supermarkets, and its streets, in the quiet, unremarkable abundance of a country that had simply built a better life for its people and let the evidence speak for itself. Boris Yeltsin saw that evidence on a Saturday afternoon in 1989, and the world was never the same. This is Declassified Vault. A new file opens every week. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, because what's coming next is even more extraordinary.